By popular demand, the vodka cooled PC is back. But no more slamming it into some old used PC, no. This time we build our own PC with over-the-counter components. The catch? Keep it under budget of $600. But that is not all. Instead of building some kind of elaborate custom loop that 1 in 10,000 PC builders actually go for anyway, I will attempt to disassemble, customize and reassemble an over-the-counter AIO. So, will it work? What kind of PC does $600 actually buy? Does vodka cooling make things better at all? Let's find out. And this time, we also vodka cool the GPU. Yes, Boris! So what does $600 actually buy? Well, not much. The parts are not used, but they are also not fresh. Some of this tech is 5 years old and some even more. One non-modular 650 watt power supply, more than we need, but we will be doing some overclocking. One M80X board, only 2 years old, one of the freshest components in the lineup. And with current hardware prices, yes, you see correctly, it is M4 with DDR4. And of course, M.2 slot. The case is a very basic, very simple C6 Max by Yonzubo. Also 2 years old, but in case category, basically brand new. But it does come with option to install carrying strap, which is the main reason I bought. 2 sticks of DDR4 memory, realistically good enough for this build, and fast enough to keep up with a 50 series graphics card if I somehow manage to find one. Sticks manufactured in 2025, but the same item has been on market for already 9 years. And the processing champion that will be getting the water cooling treatment. Ryzen 5 5500, also manufactured on the 46th week of 2025 and is no doubt sus as the manufacturer claims, but is also rolling on 4-year-old technology from 2022. I installed the basic cooler from box for initial testing to be swapped out for all-in-one very soon. I did actually consider an open-air case for this build, for easier access, for cleaning up any vodka that might be spilled. But seeing as the price was 3 times as high as a normal case like this, I quickly gave up on that dream. The 2 case files, as seen here previously, are scavenged from earlier build, more specifically from the STALKER 2 build I did 2 years ago, but since I did not end up actually using these 2 fans, they are completely fresh and ready to run. So when it comes to GPU selection on a budget building these days, you don't really have options. You go for cheapest one and try not to think about it. And what is the cheapest one available? Of course, the legendary, the infamous, passively cooled, low-profile GT1030 with DDR4 memory. Sure, it has 4 GB of that memory, but it is slow as a Soviet breadline. How slow? Let's find out. Also, with a maximum power draw of 20 watts, the GPU takes all its power from the PCIe slot. And I also threw in an old Wi-Fi card I had available for better mobility. And as I was ripping off the protective film, I remembered I had completely forgotten the SSD, which thankfully I had one extra to spare. Western Digital Green 1TB. And finally, the 4th piglet's house of tissues, spit and old parts was assembled. I introduced some stickers to it as a prize for good behavior if it manages to survive the vodka cooling. First boot, no surprises here. Everything runs, company is working fine. After running a quick Windows install and testing the front panel USB ports while doing it and checking the fans are actually alive, I was quickly introduced to Nvidia's policy of daring to own an Nvidia card from 9 years ago. Not only is the web page broken, it does not actually allow installing the Nvidia app that they force upon you by default. Yes, this is unsupported hardware. Thankfully there is the option of manually downloading drivers, but no surprise, not even this works. So I went to check manufacturer date, just in case maybe they accidentally sold me one from 2017. But no, on the card, manufactured 2025. So after installing MSI Afterburner just in case, and for obvious future overclocking, and also starting to download Gamma in the background, it's going to take some time, I finally found some legacy drivers, some 30 versions back, that finally worked. Good job! And the rest of the night, I spent testing games. I will leave the links of 3 live streams I did in description, 2 with stock clocks and 1 overclocked, but here are the results. With low settings and lowest resolutions available, but without modding and without overclocking. This is what this card can do. I say as long as CS2 runs at 60 FPS, it's good enough for me. I will set to see 15 FPS in Stalker Gamma though. The next day I booted up MSI Afterburner and added 250Hz to both the core and memory to run stable, and it added a very respectable 20 to 30% more frames, and even ran demanding titles at some FPS, except for Metro Exodus, sadly that just crashed. Even though passively cooled, it peaked at 66 degrees. Let's see if we can bring that down and maybe push some more FPS out of this card with vodka cooling. Custom loops? Overrated. Let's rip open AIO, see what happens. Generally, there are easier ways to drain one of these AIO loops, but since the connections are so tight, and I do want to add more components in, I have better luck just cutting a pipe open. And these semi-braided water tubes were no match for Boris. After draining about 150 ml of water, a normal amount of liquid for this size of kit, I dried everything that was wet and got to planing. Yes, in case you were wondering, the water is non-toxic, some kind of mix between glycol and distilled water, but keep away from your face just in case. Now, since the pump doubles as a CPU cooler and is already connected to radiator, I only need to add small reservoir of vodka and some kind of water cooling block for GPU. But since the GT1030 is not exactly a popular choice for water cooling enthusiasts, no manufacturer has ever made a water cooling block for it. But it is hardly a problem, as it turns out, as the only contact point for heatsink is the absolutely minuscule GPU die, which any normal CPU water cooling block should cover. And on topic of more good news, a standard GE1/4 pipe fits over this AIO water pipe, which meant some standard hose clamps should hold this in place. Perfect! With my shopping list done, I went out. Cheapest available water block? Check. With mature solutions compatible with casings, I wouldn't have it any other way. Some fittings for the water block, the above mentioned hose clamps, some tape for custom Gigabyte, and since I already suspected and was completely right in assuming that the water block holes do not align with the holes of the GPU, I buy a small tube of thermal glue. And of course, pre-filled vodka reservoir from behind the counter, behind the shop, from the discount section. Of course it is potato juice. Let the building begin. Night fell. Lights went on, and Boris started the build. Nothing too complicated here. You remove the old thermal paste and hope your water block cover all necessary components. I do have to point out here that you need thermally conductive, electronically insulating glue. You cannot just apply some random glue you find in hardware store, slap it on and hope for the best. Also, technically, this was not 100% the right product I bought anyway, but was it going to do job for us? We were about to find out. I left a little bit more extra room for PCIe connector and left it to set for 24 hours. Now the biggest challenge, fitting everything in. Clearly, top of case was the only place where fitting the radiator and fans was a viable option. And after a few attempts of pipe routing, I felt my exhausted brain and the late midnight hour send me strong signal saying, please, Boris, the pipe should probably point down. So I pointed the pipes down, flipped the fans so they would not push hot air inside. Not that it mattered that much anyway, it is basically open air case at this point. Cleaned off the old thermal paste and slapped some thermal mayonnaise in instead while installing the CPU block. Decided to store the vodka reservoir outside of the case this time, specifically behind the case so Vadim not steal, so when I go to visit Babushka in summer. Some tape tuning and that thing is stuck back there forever. A small label so nobody mistake it for distilled water, a small amount of dismantling to really make the pipe flow very well into the vodka bottle, and this is where those hose clamps come in handy, because the stock AIO hose did not even reach halfway to the bottom of bottle. It's like they never even considered somebody doing vodka cooling, блин. A bit of arm power and that vodka is flowing nice, not a spill inside. Good news, the glue was holding well. So, after throwing on the fittings and attempting to install the card with the slightest amount of pressure possible, the glue gave up. It was completely pointless. So I slapped on some thermal paste instead and went with cheap tuning as I should have done from the start. Card in, One more challenge done. I did have to disassemble bottom of case to allow tubes to run through, mainly because L joints were not in the budget anymore, and the store was closed and I already wanted to see results anyway. I connect everything up, a few more zip ties for purely aesthetic value, tubes went in, and vodka launch was imminent. I take one last look of masterpiece I have created, and get ready for first boot. I'm not sure if I was expecting too much or I just forgot. Water cooling pumps do not suck water in, they only pump it out. Complete rookie mistake, but also very easy to fix. Since on this pump the right side is input, then vodka only need to flow to there with gravity. And from that it goes to radiator and then to GPU. But that was a mission for tomorrow's Boris. After a quick breakfast of meat-filled pastry sacks and equipped with the freshest information, I begin the rebuild. With the most important piece in good condition, I was confident I could keep this build under budget. But what came next, I was not ready for. So okay, drill a few holes in bottom, no problem. Stick vodka reservoir to PC case with duct tape, pah! Child's play. Measure and cut the new input-output pipes to conform to new layout, no sweat. Make both connections watertight with vinyl plastic, no stress, as if it was my daily job. But after 3 days of preparation, immaculate component arrangement, and waiting for different glues to dry, this is what finally broke me. The pump was still running dry, the pipes were full, and after a small amount of vodka manual recirculation... Yes, you see correctly, that is the output pipe, not input. I do blame myself because in my lack of sleep, as I later noticed, I had taken Google's AI-powered result as fact. And then, the next day, when I tried doing the search again, it now said the left tube is the input. Who knows, maybe tomorrow the result will say there is no input at all. But, painful lesson learned. I rearranged the pipes once more. Left pipe now operating as intake, and the output, now with few modifications, runs back to radiator. From there to GPU, and from there back into bottle. I guess those 2 extra hose clamps I bought were smarter investment than I thought. A splash of fresh vodka in the bottle, a bit more of manual rotating to get water in the pump, and one quick last fix that I had just missed. You see, both the input and output pipes need to be filled with water every time the pump stops, so that air not sneak back in. But this was the easiest fix, because with just a bit more added elevation, the vodka-cooled PC version 2 was finally assembled and ready to cough its lungs clean of the air inside. A nice quick top up of cold refreshing vodka, anti-authentic, fully complete designed, 100% Slavic Gigabyte Boris designed vodka machine of the century was, after a whole week, finally done. So, first thing to do after vodka cooling your PC is lost in the world of radiation, Kalashnikovs and mutants. But unfortunately Stardew Valley had not downloaded yet, so I used Stalker 2 instead. I took a quick baseline measurement, GPU 27 degrees, thus indicate ideal contact with water block. But CPU temp was looking strange, constantly falling. Probably because there was still air in system, but the readings were good and fan settings put in place. I ran the pump at full speed for a little while, just to push more air out of system, and as midnight approached, the benchmarking could begin. With the last final drivers installed to enable monitoring straight on the pump, just in case the pump fails and temps go to 100, it would, in this case, be at least fun to watch. Both GPU core and memory clocks at plus 250 and let the workout begin. While loading shaders, the temperature climbed quickly from a steady 33 to a much more realistic 53. But after that is when CPU load dropped quickly, and so did the temperature, because this is where GPU takes over. And surprise, surprise, dropping to 17 FPS at the lowest point, that is a massive 70% climb. With that radiator passively cooling from 10 FPS to 17, I felt the magic of vodka cooling doing its business. And since the CPU was barely working at all, the temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. During this small test gaming session, the GPU peaked at 40 instead of the 66 with radiator. That is a 40% decrease. And something you never see with air cooling, the temperature actually dropping the more time you spend in game. Now that I have proved everything is working, let's test some more. The next day did arrive, and setup was looking more stable than ever. After a longer extended play of Stalker 2, the GPU temperature flatlined at 42 and then equalized with CPU temperature, because, well, it is the same loop. Up next, I give Cyberpunk 2077 a chance, but that test yielded a very unimpressive 16-17 FPS at the lowest point. Still completely unplayable, but also 40% better than before. Need for Speed Unbound went from a stuttery unplayable mess to a stuttery playable mess. From 15 to 22 at the lowest points, not only it gave 45% increase in FPS, but now the physics actually move at normal speed. The game itself though is still a bit Horizon 6 though, from 15 FPS, which was still pretty playable, jumped to a very smooth 30, dipping to 28 in the lows. That is still an 85% increase, with nothing more than vodka cooling. Still the same outdated legacy drivers, but runs smooth, no glitches, no crash. Not GTA 4, a game that has no interesting modern drivers whatsoever. It was so poorly optimized at the start that you probably have hard time cracking 60 FPS at all. Is running on 8-year-old graphics card at over 100 FPS, dipping to 97 at the lows, but also dipping back to 80 at the very lows. But that is worst case scenario. At best case, over 140. But this is a game that was released 9 years before the graphics card itself. Let's try something from this century. How about CS2? Although I only tested it on this PC without overclocking, it already ran at 60 FPS, even though at lowest settings and lowest resolution. But with overclock and vodka cooling installed, we're looking at 95 at the lowest point and over 140 on the highest. Compared to 60 before, that is a 58% increase. I might never go back to air cooling again. Subnautica jumped from 30 to 65 in the lows, but even above 80 in less detailed scenes. Satisfactory went from 15 to 19 at the lowest points, not as much improvement as I thought. Let's see what else you can do. Euro Truck Simulator ran at a very smooth 41 FPS, that is a solid 46% improvement from air cooling. Despite my best efforts to conjure up the Slavic wood nymphs to make Exodus run on my PC, the card unfortunately did not grow the necessary hardware requirements overnight. Was a crash, always a crash. With vodka cooling, GTA 5 managed to drop to no lower than 75, but stayed above 95 in similar testing. It is a smaller increase than the others, but with frame rates as high as this, it doesn't matter at all. I'm just happy the game runs at all. Almost exactly the same increase as GTA 4, but it is hardly a surprise they ran on same engine. Now Doom Eternal, this was an interesting case. Same settings, same resolution, same overclocking, and vodka cooling, and here's 52% more frames! And that's at the lowest point. Blin, if that's what it can do to 1030, imagine what it would do to 5090. I save best for last. Stalker Gamma used to run at a not very cheeky-breaky 15 FPS. But ladies and gentlemen, I can safely say, after overclocking, vodka cooling, and at a right angle cold breeze coming from window, we have achieved cinematic FPS. With lows at 25, but also climbing to above 30 when the mood hits just right. This monster collection of 500 mods, this absolute digital work of art, has just become playable on the cheapest GPU you can buy. And this concludes the experiment. Next time, let's pour something else inside. Maybe cold vodka, maybe 80% vodka, maybe some bootleg moonshine from behind the counter. Beer, kvass, sake, gin, whiskey, or maybe just tarhun. But for now, I say thank you for watching. This has been Boris. I didn't know what to do. Stay cheeky-breaky.